In Chicago's Wrigley neighborhood, young Henry and his friends George and Clark run toward the baseball field. The school team is about to play an important game, and this could be Henry's chance to be a starting player on the team. On the way, he runs into his mother Mary, who wishes him luck and throws him some sunscreen to use. However, Henry doesn't even come close to catching the sunscreen, indicating that he still has a lot of training to do to achieve his dream of becoming a professional player. Arriving at the field, the boy is on the bench and finally gets his chance to play when the catcher starts sneezing because of a cold. Henry then enters the field, and as soon as the ball is hit, he rushes to catch it, but ends up crashing into the fence and falling to the ground. To make matters worse, the fall causes his cap to cover his eyes, and when he manages to catch the ball, he throws it out of bounds. Thanks to this mistake, the school team loses by 1 point and Henry will remain on the bench for the next games. In addition to this defeat, when the boy returns home, he still has to deal with Jack, his mother's new boyfriend. Henry does not support the relationship, as he still misses his father, and so he wears his old baseball glove to every game. The next day, the boy goes to school, where he meets Becky, a student he is in love with. During recess, Henry gathers his courage to talk to her, but one of the baseball team players starts mocking the boy for the mistake he made in the game. He also challenges him to pick up the baseball and throw it toward the field. To impress Becky, Henry runs at full speed, but he ends up stepping on another ball that was on the ground and falls on his right arm. With this accident, Henry ends up dislocating his shoulder and has to keep his arm raised because of the cast. For the next 4 months, the boy is forbidden to play baseball and has to get used to his arm in this position, becoming the butt of jokes throughout the school. After his recovery, Henry returns to the doctor, who removes the cast and asks him to test the movements of his arm. The treatment seems to have worked, but when the boy moves his arm down, he ends up hitting the doctor's nose with unusual force. Henry apologizes for this, but the doctor believes that his tendons have become stronger with recovery. After the appointment, Mary takes her son back, but first gives Henry, Clark, and George 3 tickets to watch the local team, the Chicago Cubs, play. The 3 thank her for the gift and rush to Wrigley Stadium, where they watch their favorite player on the field, pitcher Chet Steadman. He used to be known as Rocket because of his fast pitches, but since injuring his shoulder, he hasn't been the same. As soon as the game starts, Chet tries to throw a strike, but the ball is hit and ends up in the stands, at George's feet. According to stadium rules, the ball hit by the opposing team must be returned, but George lets Henry throw it back. The boy accepts and prepares to throw the ball, but he feels a strange force coming from his right arm. Then, as soon as he throws, the ball is fired at an impressive speed, reaching the catcher's glove in a fraction of a second. Everyone around is amazed and goes to talk to the boy, but Henry is nervous about all the attention and runs away from the stadium. Still, his throw reaches the ears of Larry Fisher, the team manager, and he sends his assistant to find out who this boy is. Meanwhile, Henry and his friends return home and decide to test the boy's new strength with his pitches. Just like at the stadium, he throws so powerfully that Clark and George can barely see the ball go by. Besides them, Mary has just arrived home with Jack, who, seeing Henry's talent, decides to be his agent and contacts the Chicago Cubs. The next day, Jack introduces Henry to Sal Martinella, the team's coach, and they go to the stadium to test his pitches. Using a speed gun, Sal discovers that the boy is capable of throwing balls at over 100 miles per hour. Faced with all this talent, manager Fisher signs him as the newest player for the Chicago Cubs and puts him in the starting lineup for the next game. On the day of his debut, Henry and his friends go to Wrigley Stadium to introduce themselves, but the janitor says that only players are allowed in. George and Clark are then forced to stay outside, while Henry is taken to the team's locker room. Once there, he is excited to meet the players, especially Chet Rocket. However, the team is not very happy to have a kid as a reinforcement, and they ignore him, but Henry doesn't care about that, and as soon as he puts on his uniform, he rushes to the big game against the New York Mets. With the stadium packed, the game begins, and Chet tries to hit the pitches, but they are all returned by the rival team's batter. Because of this, the fans start calling for Henry, and Fisher calls the coach, demanding that Rocket be replaced by the boy. Henry can hardly believe it and goes onto the field, where he finds himself surrounded by a crowd of fans. Finally, the game resumes, and using all his strength, Henry throws the ball, but it is not fast enough, and the batter hits it without difficulty. The rival team scores the point and it's time for the second pitch, but Henry starts to get nervous and almost hits his own team's catcher. Things go from bad to worse, and the boy makes a pitch, which is again hit by the batter, who runs across the field to score the point. Luckily, the catchers manage to catch it before the batter reaches third base, saving the point for the Chicago Cubs. The home team narrowly wins, but Henry still needs training, and Sal leaves that up to Chet. The player refuses to teach a teenager, but he is warned that if he doesn't, he will be off the team. The next day, Henry returns to school, and although his performance was not the best, all the students, especially Becky, are impressed that he is on a professional team. Even so, the boy just wants to have a normal life with his friends, and after class, the three begin their project of building a boat. Hours later, Henry returns to the stadium, where Chet is waiting for him to start training. Although he doesn't like the idea, Chet realizes that the boy has potential and his pitches remind him of his glory days. Finally, the Chicago Cubs team leaves for another game, this time against the San Francisco Giants. As before, things don't go well for Chet, who needs to be replaced by Henry again. Determined to prove that the training worked, the boy takes his position, but when he throws the ball, he ends up hitting the rival batter's leg. It seems that the boy continues to make mistakes because of his nervousness, and Chet decides to enter the field to talk to Henry. He then tells him that fear is only a part of his essence, and he must let courage take over in order to make the best pitch possible. After saying this, Chet leaves the field, but everything he said was improvised on the spot, and he doesn't know if his advice did any good. As he feared, Henry also didn't understand what the man meant, but the break is over and he needs to make the throw. The boy then throws the ball, which is hit by the opposing player, but it doesn't reach a great height. Thanks to this, the Chicago Cubs catchers manage to catch the ball in time and save first and second base, preventing the Giants from scoring. This pitch impresses the players with Henry, who finally begins to have more confidence in himself. Then it's time to make another pitch, and this time the boy throws the ball straight to the catcher, scoring a strike against the opposing team. On the second pitch, Henry again gives the batter no chance, and finally, he throws a third strike, ending the game and securing the victory. The entire Chicago Cubs team rushes to congratulate the boy, and for the first time this season, the team has won 2 games in a row. After the game, the team goes to change in the locker room, and when looking at his locker, Henry finds a ball autographed by Rocket. The boy is happy with the gesture from his idol, who is gradually becoming attached to the team's new player. After that, Henry meets his friends next to Mary in the stands, and the three of them play a game in the middle of the stadium. Meanwhile, Rocket watches the boys play and runs into Henry's mother, who thanks him for advising her son during the game. Rocket is happy to hear this and says that Henry is a good kid with the talent to become a great pitcher in the future. Another day passes and the boy goes to the airport, as the next game will be at the stadium in Los Angeles. Before Henry boards the plane, Mary says goodbye to her son and throws the sunscreen again. This time, the boy catches it easily and joins the team on the trip, sitting next to Chet on the plane. During the trip, Henry thanks him for the autographed ball and says that Rocket has always been his biggest idol. The player, however, asks him not to call him Rocket because since his shoulder injury, he can no longer throw fastballs. Chet also says that despite the surgery, he fears that if he overexerts himself, his shoulder injury will worsen and he will be away from the sport forever. Still, Henry continues to admire the player, and after arriving in Los Angeles, everyone heads to another big game. The game will be against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and once again, Henry impresses everyone with his talent. Sal then decides to explore the boy's skills and says that this time he will play as a batter. Chet doesn't think it's a good idea, as he doesn't have enough experience yet, and a thrown ball could cause a serious accident. Even so, Sal orders him to go, so Chet tries to calm the boy down, telling Henry to keep the bat low and keep his eye on the ball. Henry then moves into position, and even though he's just a kid, the team's pitcher doesn't care and throws his best pitch. As expected, Henry is afraid of the ball and swings and misses, getting his first strike. The pitcher continues to pressure him, but on the third pitch, he ends up throwing the ball away from the strike zone. Because of this, a foul is called, and Henry gains the advantage, being able to advance to first base. The Chicago Cubs then choose another batter, and to disrupt the opposing team, Henry begins to taunt the pitcher. Because of this, the pitcher loses his concentration and throws a bad pitch, with the Chicago batter hitting the ball. Thanks to this, Henry runs from first base and goes as fast as possible to third, scoring the winning point again. After this game, the Chicago Cubs became undefeated throughout the season and earned the chance to compete in the World Series, thanks to Henry's talent. Upon returning from another game, Mary goes to meet her son at the airport, but finds herself surrounded by several journalists. Fortunately, Chet helps Henry get past the press, and the two join Mary, who runs towards the limousine. From there, they go to a party organized by the team, and Henry takes the opportunity to leave Mary and Chet alone. Gradually, the two grow closer, which makes Jack very uncomfortable. In the middle of the party, Fisher goes to talk to him, saying that he has received an offer to sell Henry to the Yankees for $25 million. Not only that, but Jack will receive a 10% commission, and the agent accepts, as long as Chet is removed from the team. Fisher accepts the terms, and the next morning, Henry goes to shoot a TV commercial, unaware of what is happening. Because of his popularity, the boy has distanced himself from his friends and ends up being late for the boat assembly. When he arrives at the lake, the two have already finished everything, and George confronts Henry, saying that he has put their friendship aside because of his fame. In addition, he says that the boy only joined the team because of his arm accident, which makes Henry furious, and the two start fighting. With great effort, Clark manages to separate the friends, but George and Henry end their friendship, and the boy returns to the locker room. Things only get worse when Chet is called by Fisher, who announces his resignation from the team. He says he is tired of waiting for the player to return to his peak and orders him to stay on the bench until the end of his contract. Chet can barely hide his frustration, but he still keeps it a secret from Henry, and at the end of training, he takes him back home. Once there, the boy runs into Jack, who tells him to change his clothes because they have a photo shoot to go to. However, the boy refuses, saying he is tired of all these outings and wants to spend time with his friends. Jack loses his patience and orders him to obey, but Henry fights back, saying that he is not his father. Jack replies that it doesn't matter, and even says that not even Mary should know who the boy's real father is. What he didn't count on was that Mary heard everything, and furious, she ends the relationship and kicks him out of the house. Jack insists, but she responds with a punch in the face, sending the lunatic out of there. Henry is impressed by his mother's courage, but as soon as she calms down, she calls her son to talk about his father. However, Henry says he already knows the whole story, about how he abandoned Mary when she got pregnant. Even so, the boy says he doesn't care about that, because he recognizes his mother's efforts and she will always be his greatest example. Mary is moved by Henry's words, and after making peace with his mother, he decides to do the same with his friends. Minutes later, he finds them both at the lake, finishing assembling the boat with the motor that George took from his father. When he sees Henry, George still seems hurt, but he invites his friend to cross the river together. Henry accepts, and the three start the boat's motor to cross the river, when they find Becky on the shore with her high school friends. Without hesitation, Henry invites her to join them, and the group continues down the river, having fun all afternoon. Realizing that he needs to pay attention to the people he cares about, the next morning, the boy goes to the Chicago Cubs stadium. He talks to Bob Carson, Fisher's uncle and owner of the team, and thanks him for the opportunity, but says he will leave the group to focus on other things. Even though he knows the boy's talent, Bob accepts his decision and asks him to participate in the last game for a spot in the World Series. Henry, however, learns about the negotiations for his sale to the Yankees. Upon hearing this, Mr. Bob says he didn't know about the sale, and discovers that it was all a plan by Fisher and Jack. Knowing this, he fires his nephew from his position as manager, and tells Henry that he will always be welcome on the Chicago Cubs team. In addition, Chet is also reinstated as a starter and will be the starting pitcher in the last game. Upon learning this, Chet gets nervous, but Henry motivates him, saying that this is his chance to prove his worth to everyone. The next game will be against the Mets again, competing for a spot in the World Series. On the big day, the two teams take the field, and the game begins, with Chet being the first to pitch. After years of uncertainty, the player decides not to waste this opportunity and uses all his skill to make the pitch. To the surprise of everyone on the field, he throws the ball toward the catcher, giving the batter no chance, who takes a strike. Not satisfied, Chet hits 2 more balls, and with 3 strikes, the batter is out, and the pitcher is once again called Rocket. Henry is happy to see his idol in action, and the game continues, with the Chicago Cubs maintaining their lead over the Mets. Soon, it's Rocket's turn to return to the field, but this time, he'll have to compete against one of the opposing team's best hitters. Rocket then prepares and throws the ball, but the batter manages to hit it and score a point for the Mets. In addition to missing the pitch, Chet begins to feel severe pain in his shoulder, but despite this, he prepares for another pitch. However, the ball lands outside the strike zone, and with this foul, the Mets batter advances to first base. Faced with another defeat, Sal decides to replace Rocket, but he insists on trying one last time. Even though it's not a good idea, the coach agrees, and everyone on the field, especially Henry, watches the pitcher as he prepares for his last pitch of the game. Rocket then throws the ball with all his remaining strength, and the batter manages to hit it, but his bat is shattered into pieces. With the ball in play, Rocket sees a chance to decide the game, and even with his injured shoulder, he runs to the ball and reaches first base before the Mets batter. With this heroic point, the entire crowd goes wild and congratulates Rocket on his effort. Still, his shoulder is injured, and he returns to the bench, unable to pitch the ball. With that, it's Henry's turn to enter the game, and just like his idol, the boy throws strike after strike, increasing the Chicago Cubs' lead. With only one more play left, Henry runs back to the stadium, but accidentally steps on a ball on the ground. Just like the accident at school, the boy ends up falling on his arm and hears a crack, putting his tendons back to normal. Because of this, when Henry tries to throw, the ball is thrown without any force, leaving everyone confused. The boy insists, but after throwing several balls outside the strike zone, it's only a matter of time before the Mets win the game. Seeing that his arm strength is gone, the boy decides to call the group for a meeting and says he has an idea on how to win. After the meeting, the whole team takes their positions and Henry waits for the next batter. However, it is Hedo, the Mets' best player, known for not missing fast balls, who steps up to the plate. Henry is nervous, but decides to stick with the strategy and prepares to throw a fastball. Instead, the boy uses the changeup strategy, fooling the batter with a quick movement but throwing a slow ball. The plan works, and Hedo anticipates the movement and misses the ball, striking out on the first pitch. The boy decides to use the strategy once more, and Hedo hits the ball, but it lands outside the field and is considered a foul ball. With one more pitch to go, Henry tries to think of another strategy when he notices a sticker coming loose on his father's glove. However, instead of his name, the boy finds the name Mary written on the glove, indicating that it actually belonged to his mother. Realizing that his mother had always been with him at every game, the boy is filled with motivation and prepares for the last pitch. Everyone waits in anticipation to see what he will do, but the boy just throws the ball up in the air. Hedo believes it will be an easy hit and uses all his strength, but the madman ends up missing, and the ball ends up in the catcher's glove, marking the final strike. Finally, the Chicago Cubs win the game and earn their long-awaited spot in the World Series. The whole team runs towards Henry, who is considered by all the players and fans in the stadium to be the great hero of the game. Days after this victory, Henry fulfills his promise and leaves the Chicago Cubs to play baseball with his friends at the school stadium. Although he doesn't have the same strength in his arm, the boy has become a great catcher and manages to catch a home run. Clark, George, and Becky cheer on their friend's talent, along with Mary and Chet, who retired from the sport to become the school's new baseball coach. Henry celebrates the victory in the game with his friends, wearing the World Series ring given to him by the Chicago Cubs for everything he has done for his favorite team. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.